Okay, game face. Hi, Skylar.
Hi.
Welcome to Frich. I am so excited to have you here. It's the first time I'm doing this with a friend, so I'm kind of nervous, but I'm excited.
I'm excited.
I'm glad. Okay, before we get started, I'm Aleksandra, one of the co-founders of Frich, and we're doing this because we want to just have a place where people can talk about money honestly. We can combine money, ambition, career, and just like have really real, honest conversations so that other people can hopefully get inspired and learn from us. So I want to do a little bit of a deep dive in your career because like I remember when I first met you and I thought you had one of those like mystical jobs that like everyone wants, but no one really knows like how to get it or how it works because you make films. Like that's really cool. And I feel like that's like one of those jobs where you're like, how does this work? But you, just to give a little bit of background, you are an Emmy nominated and Webby Award winning documentary filmmaker. But then at the same time, you also balance that by working for Condé Nast and creating all those AD videos that we love. So I wanted to start with one question that obviously you and I have talked about a lot, and I think it's just such an interesting conversation, and especially for creatives. Like, how do you balance the two worlds? I think the two worlds are so different. Like your filmmaking focuses more on like impact, criminal justice, disability, like social impact, but then like obviously Condé Nast world is like kind of like the exact opposite. It's all about like glamour and like yeah, but like how do you balance those two, and how do you navigate like sort of pursuing your art but then also like the reality of like paying your bills as a creative?
Yeah. I mean, that's a very real conundrum that I have. When I got into film, it was for the impact and the fact that I love filmmaking and like the art of filmmaking. But I went into it because I wanted to make films that make an impact on people's lives and change the world for the better. And I quickly realized that, sometimes those films don't really make the money necessary to, even survive or to pay rent. And the reality is that a lot of us filmmakers need to take freelance jobs or need to have a full-time job elsewhere in order to, fund our films, especially in the beginning, especially like when you're first starting out in your 20s. And I think that me realizing that it was really difficult. When I got this AD job, it was my first full-time job. I did freelance from, the entirety of my 20s, like, my early career, on top of making my films. But then getting this job, it was kind of bittersweet because it was like full-time job. And it was in a field that, honestly, like I didn't get into filmmaking for. With that said, what I realized is it's really nice to have levity. And what I realized is that my films are very intense and I would often be bogged down by just like the intensity and the, I'd become depressed and sad because like your whole world is surrounded by like the incarceral system, like the terrible realities of that, or whatever, whatever you're filming, whether that's like a personal film or whatnot. And sometimes it's nice just to, go into a celebrity's home and just film with them for the day and focus on, things that entertain people and also kind of offer as like a departure for people. At the end of the day, they want to go on YouTube and watch these videos that kind of make you forget your own realities. So in some ways that is impact, in my opinion. So I think they're both different impacts. But with that said, it was difficult for me to come to terms at first. When I got this job, I almost quit my first week because I was like, but who am I as a filmmaker?
How did like maybe joining AD or like doing all the different freelance jobs really like affect your own perspective of who you are as a filmmaker? Like how did you perceive yourself when you're trying to balance these two different things?
Yeah, I think when I was first starting out, I knew that it was a necessity. I mean, to this day, it still is a necessity. Right. Let's be real. But I knew it was a necessity, and I also think of it. I mean, I thought of it, and I still do think of it as a huge learning experience. Because every single shoot that I'm on, even if it's something like that I'm not super interested in, like a commercial for some company that I'm not excited about or whatever, it's still, I still like am learning on set. So I'm bringing my learnings and bringing it to my own sets, my own films. So in some ways, I think that I've just kind of realized that I need to like turn a positive spin onto it. I think the reality is I always knew that starting out, I wouldn't just be able to be a full-time filmmaker making my films because that percentage is extremely small.
How did you know that? Is that something like someone else told you, like an early mentor, or you just like had already that like insight from school or something?
I mean, you just kind of see it. It's like you like the only like female filmmakers, like if we're just like, limiting that to only women filmmakers, they all are Nepo babies or come from money. Like that's all it is. Whenever I'm like, oh, I love this filmmaker, I go to their Wikipedia and it's like, oh, their dad was so and so in Hollywood, or and that kind of weighs on you. And the reality is that's true. My first job out of college, I had my boss say, oh, so you want to get into documentary filmmaking? And she's like, you're gonna have to either marry rich or always have a full-time job.
And you were like 22 when someone told you
I was like 22, yeah. And at first I was like, oh, why would you say that to me? That's like not true at all.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, yeah. No, but I do think she was right and she was wrong at the same time, because I do think that you can be successful at documentary filmmaking or filmmaking in general, and owning your own production company and whatnot, and being smart, with that and being able to make money off
Do you think
of
she was wrong to tell you that though?
I think in some ways it may have been good because it made me like, I think when you're in college, like you have like the rose-eyed, rose-colored glasses where like you're like, I'm gonna win an Oscar in 3 years. It's true. You're like, I'm gonna be the youngest person to win an Oscar.
Like already picked out your outfit. You're like, I'm ready for
I already have my speech written out. Like my first film I make, I'm gonna win an Oscar. Obviously did not happen. But I think sometimes you need to be told these like realities, whether it's true or not, but like you need to be told the opposite, like the harsh potential reality. Right. And I think she was also like being reflective of her own experience. So seeing her and her own experience, whatever she was going through, I learned from that. I didn't agree with it at that time, but now I kind of understand, like, years later, I'm like, okay, I get where she's coming from. Do I completely agree with it? No. But she's not fully off in some ways. Yeah.
I am actually genuinely curious about how people get into film. So maybe you can like talk us through like the early years. Like I understand like you obviously went to school to study film, but it doesn't seem to me like it's the like cookie cutter blueprint, like going into like finance or medicine where like you go through the schooling and then you get this internship in the summer of junior year and then you get this job. Like how does that actually, like how did the early days look like for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I like to say that in film, and I think that comes with like any art career, is that there is no linear path. Like everyone's path is so immensely different from one another. And that's what's exciting, but also scary at the same time, is that it's like a winding road and everyone's path, like everyone goes on their own journey, really. I wanted to do something with impact. So I ended up, pushing away those voices, but also internalizing those at the same time. That said, good luck with film. And I ended up doing broadcast journalism. And that was my first kind of like professional sector, professional, path was broadcast journalism. And I joined like the news department at the Berkeley TV channel. I ended up being the director of news for that. And then my first few internships in college were at CNN. And then at that time I was dabbling in film, film classes at school. And I was like, I really like this. And then I took a documentary class, I think my junior year, and we could either write an essay or film a short film of some sort as our like final project. And at that time I'd become close with the formerly incarcerated students at UC Berkeley. And so I decided to steal a camera from the news department that I was working in. And I filmed a short documentary and I edited it, played it for the whole class, and I put it on YouTube. And then it ended up getting views like from the exterior world, and people were reaching out to me. And like community or like a, what is it? Like a juvenile court in Santa Barbara was screening it, and one in Georgia. And I heard of people being impacted by this video that I put on YouTube. And then I was like, oh, maybe if I make a bigger one, this can make an even bigger impact. So then I applied to grants, and I applied to a grant at Berkeley that's UC wide as well as college wide. And I ended up getting that. And that was kind of my path to going full on with film and realizing that I should do film and not do what I think is the easier path.
Listening to your story, it feels like even if you took like a tiny step in one direction, it fed into the next one, fed into the next one. It was all kind of just about being brave enough to put yourself out there. Like, I remember when we first started Frich, they said the harder you work, the luckier you get.
It's true.
And it was this whole idea of like, well, how can someone notice you, help you, support you if you don't put yourself out there? And it might sound so simple. You're just like, well, upload that video to YouTube or just apply to that grant. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? It's kind of cool to see that like these, like what seem like small steps, like actually led you to making your first documentary that was screened and like actually impacted people's lives in real time.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's like the harder you work, the luckier you get. And people don't just have luck. I mean, there might be a part of that, but I think it really is how much you work and how much you put into it and dedicate your time.
Creators in general, but maybe specifically filmmakers, what is holding people back the most?
I honestly think the thing that holds people back the most is fear. People are so afraid of failure and rejection. I think it's the rejection part that I don't know why like our society is so fearful of rejection. The amount of times I've been rejected in my life, like I can't even count. Like look at my inbox. Like all those grants, all of like the people I've cold emailed. Like it's nothing. And I'm like, why don't you just cold email them? Like just do it. When I was in college, I think I may have been missing that part of my brain or something because I just didn't care. And I had a whole spreadsheet that I made of every single person I wanted to reach out to, whether they were an Oscar award-winning filmmaker or like a USC grad student or someone that I looked up to and thought that I could learn from. And I would reach out to all of them. It was like probably like 75 people on this list. And I would say, okay, reached out. And then did they respond to me in a week? No. Okay, I'd follow up. And then I had like a 3 follow-up rule. And then if they didn't follow up in 3 weeks, you know, within my weekly follow-up, I would wait a month and then I'd follow back up. And then if they didn't respond again, I'd follow back up in like 3 or so months. And a lot of times they're like, oh my God, thank you so much for following up. I was like deep in an edit on a film that was going to Sundance. Like one thing that I struggled with a lot was just like, how do you keep going on in this world and like move, you know, up in the ranks? And one of my friends that I thought was really insightful when I graduated, she was like, it's the people who don't keep going and don't just like keep following your dreams that fail. It's the people who just keep going. You'll find some kind of success at the end of the day. And I find that to be very true.
Okay, what is one cold email or like application you sent or something that felt like so out of your reach but ended up working out in your favor and then kind of set you up on like a very positive path?
Yeah. Well, this was actually also when I was a senior in college. So much happened when I was a senior in college. And she was a part of my list of people that I looked up to. And that was one thing. And I know we live in the ChatGPT era where everyone's just like copying and pasting and like having ChatGPT write the emails. I was so proud of myself for like personally writing emails for each person curated to the films that they made or like their projects or whatever. And I wrote, you know, a really nice email to this filmmaker who's, you know, like Academy Award winning, like very cool. And it was a very nice email. And she came back. She's like, that was probably the nicest email I've ever gotten. Do you want to work for me in LA when you graduate?
So you got a job.
Yeah, I got a job out of an email that I wrote, not ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I wrote it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's like, you really never know.
So I want to maybe switch gears a little bit. So you're currently fundraising for your documentary called Seizures, which is based on your own experience navigating epilepsy. And I feel like in some ways, like what you're doing right now is a little similar to what me and my co-founder have been doing for the last 5 years, because we've been obviously fundraising for Frich and running this company. And a big part of the company is like us, like it's our story and it's us building it. And that's what you're doing right now. You're fundraising for a documentary that is based on your story, on yourself. How has it been? Like, well, one, maybe you can talk about like specifically fundraising for a film, but also like, how has the process been when like you are the focus point and you're basically saying like, yeah, like I need X amount of dollars to tell my story and I'm worth this amount of money. Like, how has the process been?
Yeah. So to give context, yes, I'm making a documentary. It's a personal film, my first personal film about epilepsy. My older brother has epilepsy, and then I also have epilepsy that I was diagnosed with when I was 15, but closeted about until just a few years ago. And this film is unique in that I was hired to do this. There was a sum of money that was presented to a filmmaker to make a film about epilepsy. And he realized he wasn't the right person to make it because he doesn't have epilepsy. And so he sought out artists and filmmakers with epilepsy, and I was the one that they ended up choosing.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that was kind of nice, is that this is the first time ever that I just started a film with money already. So I already had, it was, oh God, how much was it? I'd say it was about $800K.
Okay. Is that like, I mean, because I just don't know. Is that a lot or is that like?
That's a lot.
Okay.
Like, especially just given to you.
Right. But like for like a movie, right? Like I have no idea how
film.
much it costs to make a film.
mean, film in general, it really is all over the spectrum.
Right.
But I think people are surprised to hear that documentary can be in the millions. I think people think that documentary is like a cheap format, like the cheapest of formats. And yeah, you can do it in very cheap ways. I think you can make documentaries on your phones these days.
Right.
But the reality is a lot of the documentaries that we love are in like the 1.5 million category or even up. And that's a lot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you think about it, it's like you're paying people what they should be paid. You are paying for animation, you're paying for a lot of different aspects that it all stacks up. And, you can't really cheap out on people and their work. And I think in film, people often do. And it's, we can talk about that as well, because I've had a lot of experiences where it's like, well, it's like a good cause. So,
why don't you do it for free? Because it's a good cause.
Yeah. And trust me, I've done those.
Yeah.
Can I do those now? Probably not.
Okay, so you started off with $800,000 given to you. How does that work? Like, what do you do? Like, does it come with ties attached? Is it just a grant? Like what's the setup? Like, how does it work for film?
Yeah, so the $800 was just like basically given.
Okay. So it's a grant.
It was a grant essentially.
Yeah.
But with that said, the budget for my film is not $800K. It's more than that. So I am currently in the fundraising process. And, I think when you make a film, you're always perpetually in the filmmaking process. You're always applying to grants. You're always talking to potential investors. You're always trying to get the word out there for fundraising, for any donations, whatever it might look like. And so at this point, we have about $500K left to fundraise.
So total, you need like roughly $1.3 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where is that money going? If you can help us kind of understand, just like obviously salaries for people, but like maybe you can help us understand like how many people are involved in this, like how long is the process of making a documentary, how much are like things roughly costing. I think it's just such a like mystery. It's kind of cool to like put the numbers to things and see behind the scenes.
Yeah, obviously salaries, as you said. But every single time we film, we have to rent equipment. We have to, pay people on set. you have to pay for like random things like permits, crafty even. Like it all adds up. Crafty
Right.
is like the food, like the
Right.
snacks. And a lot of, some of the funding for my film in particular went to a lot of like my medical situations. So like my MRI fees, like certain
Right.
fees that were associated to my testing that I was filming for, because to be completely honest, I would not be doing all these testings if it wasn't for making a film. It's good that I am, but
How do you feel about doing that on camera?
it's so weird. I kind of just black out, honestly, and I'm just like, all right.
Do you feel like you're kind of like an alter ego when you're like on camera, like filming yourself, or is it still like you doing it?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever thought of that. I think that I dissociate a little bit because, like, at the end of the day, it is my real life, and I will be filming with my dad or my brother or my friends, and that's just normal.
Yeah.
And then I forget sometimes that the camera's there. But then at the same,
That's good.
yeah, it's good. But at the same time, I'm also directing it.
Right.
So then I'm like, oh, wait. I need to direct like the camera also, and I need to direct crew. Like, luckily, I do have a team that can support me and help me direct when I'm like very in the zone. And obviously, when I'm like getting an MRI or like I'm like doing a sleep deprived EEG, like I can't do that because
Right.
I'm like asleep or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird, and it's like I've spent my entire life behind the camera for the most part. So it's very strange to turn the camera on yourself and to even think that your story is worthy of making a film, because I always, my whole thing is amplifying voices that are unheard in mainstream media, because my experience at CNN, it was always just the same voices. And what frustrated me so much was that I would pitch these stories and ones of people that, you never hear in mainstream media, and they would always get rejected because they wouldn't get enough views possibly or whatever. And so with documentary is like, I want to, showcase people whose voices could really impact people's lives. So then to do that to myself, I was like, is this like, I don't know, self-indulgent?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is so interesting, right? Because like you said, like your whole thing is like amplifying voices that are not being heard or represented, and then choosing like your own voice because you recognize that you have a unique story to share. That's very difficult, I feel like, to navigate, to be like, no, this is a valid story. People need to hear it. It deserves funding. It deserves a whole crew. It deserves like 1, 2, 3, however many years to like get this right. Like, I'm just curious, like, how does that feel on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it's weird.
Like, especially when you go out and you're like pitching, and you're like, yep, this is like $1.5 million worth, and this is why.
Yeah. And it's literally yourself. Like you're like pitching yourself, which I'm sure you can also relate to. But it's it's like that added layer of it being like you're like, yeah, my story is so good. Like you should fund it. But like my whole thing is that if I had a film like this when I was going through what I was going through when I was 15 years old, maybe I wouldn't have felt so ashamed and afraid, and I wouldn't have, kept it hidden for so many years. So maybe that this film can help people who are like me. So I always validate myself with that.
Yeah.
Because again, I would not be doing a personal film if it wasn't for the fact that I was hired to do this film. Let's be completely clear about that.
I mean, I think that is like a helpful like little caveat, but like, I mean, I know I'm like joking obviously about it, but like, I do think it's really, really cool that you're doing it. And I think that's obviously why you're here, right? Because I like the whole team thinks it's super cool that you're doing it, but I think it's really courageous to share something so personal and private and something that isn't really talked about that much, and to like spearhead the need to talk about it. I think it is. Yeah, I admire it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, if you told me when I was like 21 that I would be doing this, I would not believe you. So it's wild how life works.
I know. Okay, I I'm really curious about this. So I guess like maybe there is a little bit of caveat again because you were hired to make this. But when people make documentaries, do they pay themselves salaries?
It's all case by case. My first film I ever did, it was extremely low budget. It was a short film, and it was, when I had just graduated. I didn't even think to pay myself. I think the whole budget was $33K.
Okay.
33,000. I'd say roughly it was a 2-year experience from like beginning to end.
So, and only 33,000.
Only 33,000. And in my mind, I never even thought to fund myself. Not that we would even have the funding for that, let's be real. And for me, it was like I was just so passionate about it. And I was like, I need this out in the world. And like, I need this to be screened. It's a film about formerly incarcerated students at UC Berkeley and their path to higher education. And it was meant to be screened in prisons, jails, and youth detention centers across the nation. And it's been screened at all over prisons, jails across the country, and currently circulating on the California Prison Network still to this day, which is amazing. Incredible. And it's been really cool to have met people who have come to our screenings and then fast forward a few years and they're, in law programs at UCLA or UC Berkeley. And they always attribute seeing our film right at that point in their life when they needed that inspiration, which has been really cool. And so for me, I was like, I don't need to get, paid, even though at that time that was probably the worst possible financial situation I could be in, because I was like, how old are you when you graduate? Like 21, 22.
Right.
And I didn't have any money coming in, and you're trying to navigate what is freelance? Like, how do you navigate the freelance world so you don't have a full-time job so you can also work on your film? And I really struggled with that at first, and found terrible freelance jobs and would be on random sets as a production assistant until I got my first job.
Let's do some rapid fire questions. What's the worst freelance gig you've ever done?
Worst freelance, honestly, blessed that this was when I was 18 years old. But I was the production assistant for American Idol. This is my first time ever on a proper set, and I was so excited. We had a 4 a.m., maybe 3 a.m. call time at some hotel in San Francisco. And I forgot which audition phase it was, but the celebrity judges weren't there yet because it's always the producers that do the judging first. There's so many phases. What you see on the TV is not real. And my job was to basically take the person who had just done their performance in front of the producers and take them to the interview room, which is a 10-minute walk up the stairs. And I wasn't able to talk to any of them. And I felt so bad because they'd be so excited after auditioning. They're like, oh my God, they loved it. Let me sing for you. And I'd have to be radio silent, eyes.
Oh, you were not allowed to say, oh yeah,
no,
that's good.
Although I totally did. And then I got yelled at. And I just kind of at a certain point, I was like, I'm just going to, whatever. And then one of the producers yelled at me so much. It was me and this one other PA.
And we're talking to the contestants.
Yeah. And it was after a 12-hour day. And towards the end, you're I'm so exhausted. I don't even care anymore. Yeah. And I am exhausted with people being weirded out that I'm not talking to them because that's not even my character. It's kind of an awakening of also realizing how male dominant these sets are and how masculine and how ego-centered sets are. And as a production assistant, you're the lowest on the totem pole essentially of people on set. And I PA'd for years after that. And it was tough, especially as a woman.
How much did they pay you for those jobs?
Oh man, I think for that one I got paid $100 for the day.
For 12 hours?
Something like that.
How long do you usually get hired for? Is it a 1-day thing or a week?
It depended. It really depended on what the project was. Usually I was a 1-day situation, maybe 2 days for PA. But yeah, and then you're just going from different sets. I did an Apple commercial once. I did Oprah's Super Soul show once, and just different kind of PA jobs, anything that you can get.
And that's the early days. You're just jumping from set to set, trying to like collect enough money to pay for rent, basically.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you're obviously working on your own film as well, and like building out your portfolio so that you can actually apply for part-time or full-time jobs and like actually be considered.
Exactly. And I think the thing that was what kept me going with PAing, though, is knowing that I had my own film that I was making.
What is the most underpaid job that ended up being totally worth it?
Oh, the most underpaid job that totally ended up being worth it, besides my film that I didn't get paid anything for.
That's a good answer. I feel like a good takeaway though, right? Because like it might feel like maybe pursuing your, like some people might call it like, oh, it's just like your side hustle or like your little passion project. They might like trying to like diminish it and be like, oh, it's not that important. I don't want to put time in it. But that actually kind of sets you up career-wise and builds your portfolio and helps you take that leap in your career so you're not stuck PAing for like a decade.
That's true. So maybe it is like that investment of not paying yourself and making that first film, and like luckily finding collaborators who are also down to not be paid. Which like now I hate that, and I think everyone needs to be paid on set, but it's like that's the sad reality of like film a lot of the times. And that's the reason why I got into documentary, is because it was the cheaper way of getting into film. My dream is scripted film. I want to do scripted film. Like I want to make mafia movies. But for me, the cheapest way to get into film was documentary, because you can literally pick up your phone or find, borrow a friend's camera and film someone interesting or someone with a voice or someone, who, an impactful story, and then edit it on your own and put it on YouTube or something. And it was just for me, the easiest way to get in the film industry and the cheapest way.
I love to hear that. Okay. How long did it take for a film to pay for your rent?
Like, oh man. I mean, that first year out of graduating, with all of like the random jobs that I had, I had this like one job too that was called Timeline. I don't think it exists anymore. It was just like a freelance job, and I would have to like pitch, write the script, edit the video, and it was like all about like hidden history, and it was like posted on Facebook, which is weird. And that would pay me $500 per video, which would take me like maybe a month at it, like to completely do from start to finish. But my budget at that time, I think my rent was around $500, maybe $400, because I was splitting a room with a current UC Berkeley student who I had no idea who I found on like Craigslist or something, but I couldn't afford like more than that. So I was sharing a room with her in a 2-bedroom where we were sharing it with other people. And my budget for rent was very low. I remember my budget for groceries was like $40 every few weeks. So I'd go to Trader Joe's and I'd be like, okay, let me see how much I can, put in this bag that will last me a month. And I remember it was really tough because a lot of my friends were going into tech. It was like the Bay Area where people were like, their starting salaries were quite high. Right. And they're like, oh, we're going to like this restaurant, we're going out. And I'm like, actually, like, and I was so embarrassed that I didn't tell them that I couldn't afford it. I'd be like, oh, I think I'm just going to stay in and work. And so I actually ended up just working a lot, which actually I think paid off. Yeah. But I'd say that first year, obviously there was like a little, like probably a few months where I was like trying to figure out how to maneuver the freelance world. But once I did get like several, like the Timeline job, like which was pretty recent out of graduating, and then also PA jobs, I think I was able to pay the rent pretty quickly. That's awesome.
And I think it's also really cool for you to like share the fact that, like, I think it's also very, very true in New York and San Francisco as well, of course. But there are these like two parallel worlds. There's the people that like come out of college and go into like finance, whatever, and like their starting salaries are like crazy amounts. And then you have people that are still figuring it out, or they go on like more unconventional career paths. And it takes a little bit to figure out how to like turn your craft into something that can also sustain your life. And by being literal neighbors and like living in the same city and being in the same circles, but like living such different realities, it is a very difficult thing to navigate, especially when you're young and like you are a little embarrassed to talk about money and you're embarrassed to admit that you can't afford something.
It was probably like the most humbling experience of my life. And also it was the Bay, so I was literally living across a bridge. Like they were all living in San Francisco. I would not in a million years at that time of my life be able to afford an apartment in San Francisco, even if I was sharing like a room or something. I was living across the bridge in the East Bay, way cheaper. And so even having like that literal bridge that you have
So
to cross to go
interesting,
see them, and to like you felt like I was living a very different life than they are, even though I would see them every week still.
Yeah.
But our budgets were extremely different, and I think it was a good experience to have though, because I learned how to say no to things. I learned how to prioritize certain things financially,
Yeah.
and it makes me appreciate where I am now even more, because I know where I came from.
Right.
And that wasn't easy.
And you can say yes to things now
Yeah.
and appreciate them and be like, that's not a given that you can do all these amazing things.
Like I remember my friends would go on like these trips to Mexico or to Europe, and I was like, I can't afford that. And I would just be like, oh, I'm filming.
Yeah.
Like I would just like make up some excuse, but in the reality, I just couldn't afford it. But now it's like, oh, I can actually go to on a trip somewhere, because I make money now.
Yeah.
So that feels good.
My last question, when it comes to money, career, ambition, like all these things, what do you wish creatives talked more openly about?
I wish creatives talked more about, I have two answers. I wish creatives talked more about who's funding their lifestyle and their art. I think oftentimes I would compare myself to other artists, specifically in the film world, and be like, oh, why am I not at that level yet? And to this day, I still do. But then it's like, then I learn more and I'm like, oh, their parents are extremely wealthy, or they come from money and their parents are paying all of their rent, plus funding their film, plus
making introductions,
or even just the introductions itself. And the film industry has a very bad history of nepotism.
I don't know why I'm laughing. This is not funny.
It is the reality. And,
right.
We love the occasional nepo baby,
right.
but it's like, there is a disheartening element to being like, you're so close, but that you would be so much farther if you came from a family like that. Like, I know that I would be farther in my career if I came from a family that, was in the industry or had like, generational wealth or whatever it is.
Right.
And I think a lot of times you meet filmmakers and they don't talk about that. And then you find out through some random person, like, oh, their dad owns like whatever company. And and you're like, oh, that makes sense why they were able to fund an entire feature film when they were like 23 years old.
Right.
I think it's like perspective there, and it would make, I think, everyone else feel better if they were just like, honest about that.
Just leveling the playing ground a little.
Yeah. And it's
honesty.
Like, yeah. And it's like, I think we all compare ourselves as, in any industry that we're in. And even that, just like from a mental health level, would help.
Yeah.
And then I think also one thing that artists, I think, need to talk about are their day rates.
Oh, yeah.
People don't talk about like, oh, how much, like if you're doing a freelance gig or something, how much would you say like your day rate is? Like I've always texted my friends, I'm like, what should I say for this company? Like, is it this much or is it this much? No one teaches you that. Like no one's like, this is your worth.
Yeah.
And if I knew that earlier on, maybe I would have been paid more than $500 on these like timeline videos that I was doing.
That took a month.
That took a month for me to make, and I'd only make $500 for one video. Right. And maybe if I knew my worth, because people were talking about that earlier on, I think maybe I could have been making more money at a younger age. Yeah. So I think that's, an extremely important thing as well.
What's the minimum you would take if someone were to hire you right now for a day job? Like for one day of work.
One day of like directing.
Yeah. Like if I wanted to have you for one full day, how much would your minimum be?
Well, you're a friend, so you get the friends discount.
I get a 20% friendship discount.
So for commercial work, I'm just gonna say commercial work because that's like probably the highest paying. The minimum that I would do is probably like 25 to 3,000 a day.
That's good.
And obviously negotiate, like you can negotiate that for a week, like whatever
Right.
it might look like. And like that's like usually what I aim for though. And
Yeah.
then, you know, up for negotiation and depending
Yeah.
on the situation. But yeah, that's
that.
kind of my rate. So
Great. I love to hear that. I hope that's helpful to anyone. 3,000 minimum. Don't take less.
3,000 minimum.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking so honestly about all this. I think it was such an interesting conversation.
Of course. Thanks for having me.